Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to my channel. As you probably know, my name is Joanna. In general, I'm Agile and Scrum expert, but if you already know something about me, you know that I'm also a very curious person, a person who loves learning, extending my perspective. Not to mention the fact that I don't believe there are clear constraints where agility starts and where ends. What are the skills that we should develop? And this is why today I'm having a very special guest, expert, experience expert when it comes to public speaking, and we are going to deep dive into that topic. Cyril, it's a pleasure to have you here. Would you be so kind and introduce yourself?
Thank you very much for having me, Joanna. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Cyril Junior Dim. I am a communications expert, speechwriter, and professional public speaker. It's both my passion and something I'm turning into a career of late. You may have heard of me, if at all you've had the great misfortune from the circuit of competitive public speakers, because for a couple of years I would enter a speech contest just as a way of gauging my skills as a speaker. And very fortunately, I was able to be crowned the 2022 World Champion of Public Speaking, the youngest in documented history. I work as a project manager. I manage a team of IT experts, and right now I've got two projects on my hand. It's actually quite a bit of a crossroads in my career because my background is as a developer, and only now have I started my career as a project manager. And hopefully, we get to talk about how that came to be later on. So, this is me, and it's a joy to be here.
Thank you very much. And speaking of your career, actually, I believe it's a very good moment. I'm super curious and interested how it all happened for you. So, what is your background? What were your steps in your career? So, would you be so kind and tell us a story why you are now working as a project manager, an agile project manager? Maybe one day you will call yourself a product owner.
Absolutely, absolutely. I should say that even though I'm only starting to turn public speaking into a career now, it's always been a part of my life. I've always been a performer, if you'd like to call it that, of course. It's just that I came from a society that believed you were either a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure. And so when it came time to choose what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I chose from a set of options that would, in my opinion, guarantee the most financial security. Now, they say every boy has an uncle, that uncle that teaches you to drink, to swear. My uncle just happened to be able to hack a router, and he and I were really close friends. And so, from a very young age, he was an influence that leaned me towards the world of technology, video games included, of course.
Mhm.
And it was in the back of my head to place myself in an environment where I could start to contribute to the world of tech. And that led to me studying computer science in Wrocław, which is another very long, intricate story. By the time I graduated, I had a firm understanding of software engineering practices. I had a chosen stack, and I had started working for a few reputable companies in Wrocław. So by the time I graduated, I was already an employee.
Mhm.
I quickly discovered, however, that in the world of software development, while I could be a good employee, while I could have a job and a way to sustain myself, I would never be the best. These guys that work as software engineers are just some of the most intelligent people I've ever met. It's like their minds work on a different wavelength. And it affected me. A part of me was super competitive, but a part of me also felt that if I wasn't at least at their level or somewhat higher, that I'd always be slowing them down. Now, whether or not that's true or accurate is another story, but it put me at a point where I had to reevaluate my career and ask myself the question of what am I actually good at? Now, the simple answer was that I can talk. And you put me on stage, off stage, I can talk, I can connect. But I started thinking, well, how do I turn that into a career? And how do I do that without putting to waste all the years I spent learning tech, project management? That presented an immediate front where I would have to talk, to connect with clients, to establish new business, to talk to my team. But at the same time, I would have to have a working understanding of what my team was doing. So it was sort of a sweet middle ground between my technical background and the skill that I spent my life learning in communication and speaking. So that brought me here as a project manager. Some days are good, some days are less than good, but they're never awful. And I enjoy the challenge very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, that's a pretty interesting story. Start with finding what you are good at. It's not so obvious, right? We tend to follow
Absolutely.
trends or fun fact, I haven't chosen my studies for myself. My family did that for
Right.
me. And I'm not working actively in the domain, well, because it wasn't my choice. Fun fact, I wanted to be a doctor, but my family said no.
Right.
So you see.
Well, absolutely. And I think there's a growing pool of students that are driven by external influences when it comes to choosing their careers. Um, One of the major ones, of course, being social media. I think I must confess that when it comes to careers, many in the generation tend to have a romanticized view of what the job actually is. So, for
Hmm.
example, you say project manager. It's very easy to conflate that with, oh, so you call all the shots, what you say goes. When actually on the ground, the truth is rather different. So, I must say that influence, that external influence, it went a certain way when it came to choosing my career.
Yeah, thank you. And what about speaking? Because we already know that you are the master of public speaking. You are simply the expert, world class expert. And you emphasize that this is what you do really, really well. How did it start for you?
Well, that's an important question because each time I look at that question, it seems like the answer takes me further back in time. If I
Hmm.
think I started in sixth grade, there's always a story before that that I also need to include. Uh, I should say I came from a family of performers. I would say at the core, that was the influence. Mom was an actress. Two of my aunts are runway models. One is in Miami, the other is, I have no idea. She travels all the time. And so I was cast into a family that wasn't shy from standing in front of people, being in the public domain. My mother always emphasized confidence. Now, as a kid, didn't really know what confidence meant. Confidence for me was the absence of fear. So if I'm not afraid, I'm confident. And you know how kids will always have these little plays, these little dramas, and you get to be an actor. That was my early childhood. I never thought much of it, and honestly, I didn't know if I was going to go towards Hollywood or towards a laboratory. So this was all innocent fun. A turning point was in sixth grade. We were invited, our school was invited to take part in a commemoration of the National Tree Planting Day. And as part of the celebration, some students were supposed to give speeches. Now, my sixth grade teacher, he walks into the class and he just looks for those students who write the best essays. So he's literally looking around, picking you. And he looks at me and he thinks a bit. And he's like, Dim, you too. He calls us out, says, all right, this is what's going to happen. You write an essay about trees, the same exam length, bring it tomorrow, let's talk about it. Okay, fine. I go home, I write as quickly as I can because I want to watch Power Rangers. I really don't care about all this tree stuff. And I bring it back the next day. And I realize there's a process of elimination. My teacher is saying, okay, thank you, but maybe next time. And I'm thinking, oh, geez, I don't want to be eliminated. And I'm lucky I don't get eliminated. And only then does he reveal that this essay is going to be a speech. I'm thinking, okay, could have told me that earlier. But remember, in kindergarten, I was doing plays and stuff. So, okay, I can stand in front of people, no problem. We show up to the event, and I realize I'm the youngest speaker there. And I get even angry at my sixth grade teacher. I'm like, come on, for crying out loud. I'm here, high school students, members of parliament are here, and you want me to give this as a speech? I wanted to complain as much as I could, but in the end, I chose to be the adorable sixth grader because apparently we used to get a lot of sympathy for being young and adorable. And I give this poorly written speech. I just want it to be over, and thank God it is over at some point. But then this member of parliament, I remember her to this day, she walks up to me and she says, "Son, you could go really far with this. You seem to know what you're doing in front of people." I said, "Oh, okay." She says, "You know what? I want us to remember today. Come here." And I follow her. And as part of tree planting day, she plants where she was supposed to plant, and it was an American ash tree. She says, "You're going to plant this tree with me because as long as the days of a tree are, your skill and growth as a public speaker will be." And I thought, American ash trees can have a really long lifespan. So I took that to be a blessing. And that tree stands to this day. And honestly, I trace my whole career. I've spoken in a few continents. I've spoken to well over 20,000 people. I've had audiences of a few thousand people. I've spoken in schools. I've spoken in companies. And I can trace all that to a single piece of homework that I didn't want to do, that I got to do because earlier on my mom put me on stage. So that's my story.
Oh, wow. That's such an inspirational story, you know?
I seemed to have been in the right place at the right time for the right things to happen. I don't know if I can take credit for any part of it. I was just a participant, honestly. And the results have been what the results have been. I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah. Well, I would love to emphasize that there is always a choice. You chose to do certain things, not the opposite ones. And as this tree, you are standing here as this amazing tree, and you are doing amazing stuff still on your journey to become a better version of yourself. So I would dare to say, yes, it's not only you, but you were also there.
I'll take that. I'll take it for sure. Maybe a little bit I was there, just a weeny little bit.
And that was enough, you know, that was enough, this presence.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
With that inspirational story, if you are still watching us, the hashtag for our today's story is tree. So if you want to let us know that you are still watching and you are amazed by the story, please put hashtag tree in the comments. So we know how it started, but how did it affect your career? Maybe it's still affecting. I believe uh, you can still taking advantage of that and moving that forward. So how does
Oh,
it work for you right now?
absolutely. Absolutely. It does affect my career. When I walked into the industry, into IT, I noticed quickly that there was, at the time, huge emphasis on the technical know how. If I know how to
Mhm.
do the job, I'll do the job. Just get out of my way. That's it. And it made for work environments that, yes, could produce value, but nobody really enjoyed being there because at the end of the day, you're working with human beings and human beings react emotionally. They're emotional creatures. Even if it's an IT guy in his basement somewhere, not seeing the sun for a few days, at the core, that's still a human being. And their humanity is directly tied to things like motivation, and those things are directly tied to how you engage with them, how you talk to them, and how they feel being a part of the organization. Now, I was very fortunate to be surrounded by leaders who made that a priority. Not just that people do their jobs and get it done with, but that people enjoyed being a part of the system, being a part of the family. And to that end, I noticed that public speaking came in real handy. I noticed that many people tend to think of public speaking as something you do on stage. You get on stage, get a
Hmm.
microphone, you say something, people clap afterwards. My material experience has been the exact opposite. Public speaking is you in a boardroom pitching a product. Public speaking is you sitting across the table from a date, trying to convince them to give you a second date. Public speaking is you trying to negotiate a car out of your parents. Public speaking permeates every part of our life. As you said, we may not realize that that's what it is. And the same applies to how things are in the workspace. And so when I happened across environments that put a particular emphasis on soft skills and particularly how people felt as a part of the organization, I noticed that those organizations tended to thrive. They had a culture and work didn't feel like work. It felt like, oh, it's a part of my life that I do. I wake up every day, drive across the city, sit in front of a screen and plug away, but it's not work. I genuinely enjoy it. Why is that? Because they were part of a system. They enjoyed it very much. But not only that, there's an extra layer when you're talking to the clients, because as professionals, it's our job to communicate our value. And that's directly tied to how much we can make and who we attract and who wants to work with us. I always remember one client, he looks at us, he said, the truth is, we like to work with people we trust. I was like, okay, and people we like. It's very obvious, but it's never said so outwardly. And public speaking directly speaks to that, making people invest in the idea of you and making people like you. And so I've found that my career has always been more successful when I created relationships of honest, open, concise communication, where communication was at the core. Skill became secondary, and with a certain measure of skill, supported by a solid structure of communication, we always seem to get the job done. And the same remains right now as a project manager on these two projects. I cannot separate the progress we've made, the profits we've made, from our ability to maintain a relationship with the client and within the team that is sponsored by efficient communication. So public speaking goes all round in that regard.
I love that story and those examples very much because I believe you are giving us a very powerful lesson about agility. Agile Manifesto starts with people, individuals, and interactions over
Mm-hmm.
processes and
Process
tools.
of them.
Yeah, and you are now emphasizing so much how important it is in your job: collaboration, communication, Scrum values. I believe I've heard at least one of them directly in your talk. So for me, it's a pleasure. My soul, my Scrumish soul, is now smiling inside.
Well, I can definitely remember a few of our conversations before, Joanna, where we've gone over how uh, these values, the Scrum values that we speak of, how they directly speak to the relationships between the team and how those relationships translate to value somewhere down in the pipeline. And so I'm thankful that this has been a part of my training as well. Beyond the very artistic training of a speaker, there's been this layer that you added through the Scrum training that made it so that the link between the two has never been clearer. What I learned out there and what I can do inside organizations as a manager, the link has never been clearer, especially because we had these meetings discussing Agile and Scrum. So kudos to you on that one.
Thank you very much. And this is yet another example why I love being a trainer, mentor, because it's never one-way relationship. I'm rediscovering what I already know from a totally different angle. So my life is getting more interesting, and I feel like the learning is never complete.
Oh, absolutely. It's also something that's very emphasized in the community of public speakers. Aside from you, I've got another mentor. She's based in Germany. And I remember we were working on a speech this one time. It wasn't supposed to be too long, but it was a very important speech. And I experienced writer's block, and I say to her, "Look, I don't know. I don't like this idea. I don't know what to say." And she looks at me. She says, "Cyril, how old are you?" And XX, I tell her my age. She says, "Look, there's nothing that you're going to tell me." For example, she's young. She's young. She's the tender age of 80. And she says, "There's nothing that you're going to tell me that I've never heard before." And it is going to be like that in much of your career. You're not reinventing the wheel. Much of what we do as public speakers is use information that people already have and present it to them in a somewhat different perspective, so that maybe, just maybe, they start to draw different conclusions. So certainly I can see the parallels there as well with what you just said about using what we have to create new ideas.
Oh, it's so beautiful. A lot of dots are now shining and connecting.
Absolutely. This is what we do.
Our daily work, finding shining dots and connect them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have another question.
Sure.
So, do you remember the most challenging public speaking situations in your professional career?
Yes, I can remember a few. Uh, I like to use these in trainings because many times I encounter students who experience stage fright. I think fear is one of the biggest obstacles that we have to overcome as trainers and as speakers. So I can tell you one story of fear. It was the day of recognizing human rights, International Human Rights Day. I'm a student in an all boys school, and as part of the commemorations, each of us are going to read one of the rights from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, something of that sort.
Mhm.
We're all going to read one human right. So that's what, 3, 4 lines. I've given 2 hour keynotes, 3, 4 lines. What is that? However, the now president of the country is present. He's there at this event. And as I walk up on stage, he's right behind me because he's on the stage and the students are there. There's separation. There's his security hidden everywhere. There's my teachers watching the entire school. About 800, 900 people are there, but it's 3, 4 lines. What's the worst that could happen? I've been on stage since I was 3. I go up there and I say, human right number, and I say the number, and I just blank. And I just go, quiet. I cannot remember even the first word. The future president of the country is right behind me. All my teachers, all the students, including the junior students, everybody who ever looked up to me is there. Oh, and we invited a few guest schools. So it's not just my school, it's a few schools there. So that pushes the number up to about 2,000. And I freeze. For the life of me, I cannot remember what that human right says. And after what feels like an eternity, I finally have the courage to say, well, I know that as long as I'm not breaking the law, I have the right to read my human right. So I pull out the little book from my blazer and I have to read those 3 or 4 lines because for the life of me, I couldn't remember. And I left the stage and I wished the earth would swallow me. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And as it concerns messing up, well, that's one time when I messed up for sure. A second one, I would say the challenge was more intrinsic because we always speak of authenticity, we always speak of letting the audience meet the real you. I'd say one of the most challenging speeches I ever gave was when I had to openly admit a secret that I had kept successfully for essentially my whole life. Because I have mixed heritage. My mother is Zimbabwean, my father is Nigerian. I was born in the UK. So my life wasn't very easy growing up in Zimbabwe because I had a middle name, which was Nigerian. I had an accent like this, and I was the easiest kid to pick on. So there was a part of me that I kept secret, sort of as a way to protect myself. And it came time for me to choose something to speak about, and I knew that I needed to speak about something real, something important. So I chose to describe this experience, the experience of coming to accept myself. It was difficult as well, not just because I was sharing something that was so important to me, But because, as it is with any performance, the performer is worried. What if the audience doesn't receive this performance well? What if they don't like the piece? What if they don't resonate with it? So that took some digging deep. I still watch the performance ever so often, and I still react very strongly to it. I feel a sense of pride, but I still feel a sense of fear sometimes of, wow, we really made that speech. It's crazy. So those are two very difficult challenges I've had. There's a small one even. I'll give you a tiny one as well. Outside of speechcraft, I'd say it's a bit of a challenge in professional spheres to be received as a communications expert. Everybody thinks, you're just a speaker. Oh, there he goes again. He's making another speech. Cyril, stop it. Um, and sometimes there is that difficulty of, look, I'm not just a speaker. I actually have something to say, and I wish you'd take me seriously. So those are three challenges that from time to time I have to contend with.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you for your openness. And I have a message for everyone who's listening to us. Even world-class expert has to face the fear, right?
True story. It never goes away. It just changes. The fear is always there.
Yes,
Be afraid, but do it anyway.
exactly. And do you remember the situations that you believe were the most successful, the most important for you?
I can think of a few. The first one and the easiest one to get out of the way are the speech contests, because uh, even though they're very important awards, not easy to get, I still try not to measure myself by the number of trophies I've won. But as it concerns moments of success, yes, each time you win, you stop and you reflect and you're thankful and you imagine how far you've come. I know the first major title I won, it took me 6 years to win that title. I tried 6 different times, I failed each time, and on the sixth time it finally worked out. I was able to do one Polish championship in 2020. Uh, that worked out. And when the trophy came, I needed to stop and I needed to reflect. I needed to be thankful. There was the World Championship as well. But these are the trophies. These are the trophies. That's one success. I'd say a success that I particularly value is the outreach we've had within schools and universities, particularly to the school going age. When I began as a public speaker, speaking was just, well, he's confident, he's not afraid. And many times the idea of speaking in front of people was a punishment, really. You have something to say it to the whole class. We never thought of public speaking as the life skill that it actually is. And so, pursuant to the efforts of a few other renowned speakers, uh, we've been successful in introducing public speaking as a course that is taught at university here in Wrocław. I had the great privilege of leading this course at the University of Economics. And they gave me a group of freshmen, and they gave me the privilege of being their very first lecturer. So this was day one of university. They had not had any other lecture. And I got the privilege to be their introduction to university. And I treasure that. I really treasure that because it changed the narrative of what public speaking is. And now it's a function of knowing how to communicate value, not just getting up on stage and entertaining people. That and a few other commitments I've been able to make in Africa, where students have reached out to me back in Africa and we've been able to work together. I've been able to mentor them and they've been able to see some results for themselves. I take these as the real accomplishments. I think successful leaders don't dominate, they reproduce themselves in others and they leave a legacy and they allow for somebody else to continue where they left off. Now, I don't know what my glass ceiling is, but given the work we've been able to do in the universities and the schools in Africa, going now and beyond, I'm certain that whatever my glass ceiling is, there will be at least one of my students that can break it and take it even further. And that's the real success for me.
Oh my gosh, now I'm super excited. I used to work at the university during my PhD studies, and I can relate to that so much. I believe that this is something that is you as a tree, you are now seeding more trees, you know?
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Exactly. And
Absolutely.
again, we have our tree, right? But yeah, I believe this is the hashtag tree. I believe this is something that if you ask me why I do what I do, because I want to be a tree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really appreciate that I was helped to figure this out because, and I like, this is why my answer was in two parts: the things I've taken, which are the trophies, and the things I've given. Because all too often I was focused on this first bit. And I think so many people are focused on that first bit because there's not a lot going around. So when you're able to take a lot, maybe that's the measure of success. But I'm really thankful for the people that have figured out that true success is a function of what you've given and what you leave behind. It's not a function of acquisition, it's a function of legacy and continuity. And I certainly hope that even in my career and even in this company that I am in right now, that there is something to continue if my time here ends. There is something to take up from, and that would be a measure of success for me.
Leaving sprouts behind.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I believe we've heard a lot of inspirations, and if you believe it's about public speaking only, guess what? It's not. We are tackling a lot of important topics about leadership, about agility, about being a great human being. Honestly, that's my perception. So I'm wondering, do you have any piece of advice for our viewers when it comes to developing their skills?
absolutely, absolutely. I do know a few things that helped me along the way. Like we said earlier on, public speaking has taught me the art of communicating value. But I'm sure you agree with me that you cannot give value you don't have. And this became one of the first lessons I had to learn, is that I had to commit to becoming valuable, be that through studying, be that through reading. It was things as tiny as taking care of my health. I didn't realize it all factors in, but that's it there. When something is valuable, it's taken care of in every way imaginable. Mind, body, spirit, it's all taken care of. So that's step number one, or piece of advice number one, if you will. Earlier on, I mentioned that I believed that confidence was the absence of fear. I guess this is the second piece of advice that I can offer, that my learning has been that it's absolutely not. You can be petrified and confident in the same breath. I think more of us should yearn to focus on the message rather than the delivery. The delivery comes with time. If you've been on stage in front of cameras, in front of people long enough, you start to learn how stages work, you start to learn how boardrooms work, wherever it is that you speak. But learning how to craft a message so that people want to listen, I think that's a worthwhile venture, because that ensures that from the word go, you carry people's attention, because people are driven by, why should I listen? What's the value? What's it in for me? And if we learn that, if we learn to communicate value, it can certainly do loads for us. I'd say as well, the last piece of advice is that public speaking is just one of the soft skills that you can learn. There are many others to commit to. And uh, committing to learning soft skills is part of becoming a complete employee. So if you spend as much time learning soft skills, perhaps as you did learning the hard skills that got you this job now, you're guaranteed not only of success in your current position, but you are almost certainly guaranteed of having a hope to go up the ladder as far as you can. And it's been my experience in my trainings that many of my clients are individuals who realized, sometimes late in their career, that the soft skills were necessary. And he's a leader, he's an executive in a company somewhere, and he's like, look, I speak to my people and it's just nothing happening there. What can I do so I can speak and I move them to action? And that's when they find the coach. You don't have to go down that path. If you're committed to learning these things now, it becomes a part of the professional you will be when you are an executive one day or beyond. So those are three things that definitely made me the speaker I am today. Commit to learning to be valuable. You cannot give value you don't have. The last one that I just mentioned being soft skills are a part of becoming a complete professional. And the one in between, focus on learning to craft a message rather than the delivery. The delivery is a performance. If I want that, I'll go to the cinema. But the message is your unique truth and is the reason I'm listening to you. Your message is that important. So these are pieces of advice that I hope can help people to improve in their careers and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do you know fun fact?
What happened?
I tend to call soft skills P skills, people skills, or actually my favorite one, power or powerful skills. I believe we tend to underestimate the importance of certain skills. People believe, okay, I will go to a class, I will read about it, or, oh, come on, I'm a human being. My first words, strange ones, but still, came out of my mouth when I was born. And I believe this is not the right direction. Redefining that into not just soft skills or skills that are given for free to everyone, into powerful skills that are a part of your job. This is something that resonates with me a lot.
Absolutely. And I do believe strongly that this is part of what a complete professional is.
So double P, powerful skills for complete professional.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so thank you very much for that conversation. That was an enormous pleasure. I've learned a lot, and honestly, it gives me so much joy. Just listen to how you speak. You know, you are embodying what you are saying. You have your message. You are consistent, and you know you're convincing. So you are, I believe, you are bringing such a breath of pure leadership. I want to follow that guy. He has some great things to tell, to show me.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this, and I really appreciate the fine example that you set, especially in the time we've spent together learning principles of Scrum and Agile, and hopefully in the many other courses we'll take together in the future. So, thank you very much for being a part of how I become a complete professional.
Thank you very much. So maybe one day we will be able to meet again. If you enjoyed our conversation, feel free to let us know. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to reach out or simply leave a message. Thank you very much.